guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So in today's episode, I am finally doing my recap on the Chestnut Man on Netflix. And so I watched this show or this series maybe a few months ago, and I just never got around to recording the actual episode just because of the old way that I was trying to record these episodes with recapping every single thing that happened. And so I finally got my new format together for this particular show, and so here we are doing the episode. With what this show covers, it's obviously about murder and stuff like that. I was so creeped out by the Chestnut Man. I literally never want to see another one again. It literally gave me nightmares for a few days just because of how gruesome it was. I've never heard of Chestnut Men before watching this show, and so just how they look is just really creepy. Like, I know in other cultures they make some form of like dolls, but this just looked really creepy. And no offense to the culture or anything like that, but I just never want to see another Chestnut Man again because they are very creepy. And so with all that being said, let's just go ahead and get into the episode. So for my 5 key points of the season, for point number 1, Christine goes missing and she is presumed dead and dismembered. So Christine's mom is this lady named Rosa. She is this really high up political figure who is kind of like facing a lot of heat around the time that her daughter goes missing, and I guess she has some kind of like controversial policies or opinions on things that affect the people that she is governing over. And so her daughter is kidnapped, her daughter is taken, her daughter is dead, and at this point the mom is being threatened. She's receiving a lot of hate mail. She also has taken time off of work, and so I think on her first day back she goes into work, and she's really just trying to jump back into everything, but she is also still dealing with how this traumatic event has impacted her life going forward. And we do see that her husband, I'm not sure if his name is pronounced Steen or Sten. I'm gonna say Steen just because I think that's what it is. He is not dealing well with the death of his daughter. He is drinking a lot. They do have a son named Gustav who is obviously still in their care. He's still around his parents, and you just see that he's kind of not necessarily neglected, but he is just really not kind of like connected to his parents because his mom works a lot, and then his dad is obviously still grieving and trying to deal with this loss that they have experienced. And we do see this one scene where there is this clay handprint that the daughter, Christine, had done. I don't know how old she was when she did it, but it's hanging up on the wall. And I think for some reason, maybe the son is messing with it, the dad is messing with it, and they just hit it a little bit too much, and it falls and it breaks. And the dad is really like distraught over this because I get the impression that they cherish all of the little things that they have of Christine and like just like the memories of her. And so the dad is not doing well with the daughter's death. And then we also have other crimes that are happening kind of around this time. And what happens is at one of the crime scenes there is a Chestnut Man, and they're able to like analyze the Chestnut Man because they are at the crime scene of a woman who is like tied up in a park, her hand is cut off, and then Hest is this investigator that they brought in to help with the case, and I think he's the one who sees the Chestnut Man. They take it in, have it analyzed, and there's a fingerprint on it, and so the fingerprint is Christine's. And so this just creates the question of did Christine come across Chestnut Men? Did she sell them? How did her fingerprints get on this Chestnut Man? And does it mean that she's still alive? And so there's all of these questions, and that brings Hest to Rosa's family to kind of get more information on what their connection is, what the connection could be to the Chestnut Men, and then all of the things that are happening as far as the crimes and murders that are taking place throughout this season. And so what we learn is that Christine did in fact sell Chestnut Men with her friend, and we see the dad Steen going to one of her friends. We get the sense that she hasn't been hanging around the family just because of the fact that, you know, she was there hanging around the family because of the daughter Christine. The daughter's not here anymore, and so they kind of have drifted apart or whatever. And so we see the dad talking to that friend, and she tells him, like, hey, we did sell Chestnut Men in the past, but we didn't sell them the previous year, and so now you're trying to figure out, okay, if they didn't sell the Chestnut Men recently, how does someone have a Chestnut Man that was still able to have her fingerprints on it for so long? And so obviously the question comes up if whether or not she's still alive. And so the dad, Stan, he really runs with this. He even holds a press conference just talking about the fact that there's fingerprints of his daughter associated with another case, what this might mean for his daughter, and that sort of stuff. And so that just creates a lot of questions that need to be answered throughout the rest of the season. I do want to highlight that we do have one man in jail for her death. This is a person that they believe is responsible for killing her and then also cutting up her body. I think also at this time they haven't actually recovered her body, which is like a huge red flag because they do have this man in jail for this crime and he is not giving them any information. And what we later find out is that he's actually not the person who did it. He's just taking the fall for the real killer, and he's actually really impressed with the killer for the scheme that he has pulled over the cop. And I do want to highlight that this person who is in jail for her death is a crazy person. He is not someone who is like wrongly put in jail in that sense. He does need to be off the streets. Going into my second point, Rosa's son, Gustav, has been kidnapped. So he was kidnapped by these parents who had lost their child to basically CPS. This is taking place in another country, but in America we know it as Child Protective Services. And so this was all because of the mom's policy. So what we find out about Rosa is that I don't know if she was adopted into a family. I'm under the impression that her family adopted other kids to join their family. And so we learn that she has experienced having like foster kids and that sort of thing in her home. And as a result of her experience, she's really passionate about making sure that kids are with parents who can properly take care of them, that sort of thing. And so we have these parents, I think their child was like really sick or something like that, and the child ended up being taken away from the parents, and then I think the child died. And so the mom was really upset by this. The husband was upset, but the mother was really driving the scheme to get back at Rosa for what happened to their kid. And so what we learn is that Rosa has a driver. This is a new driver, and he is actually married to the woman who is really driving this plot to get back at Rosa for the fact that their child was removed from their care and then also that their child is dead. We do have them putting the pieces together that Rosa's driver is not who he says he is, and then once they realize that their son is kidnapped, the parents are really distraught because here they are dealing with another tragedy as far as one of their children, and obviously this is their last remaining child, and so they really want to do everything that they can to get this child back. And so we do see the people who kidnapped Gustav, we do see them like driving in a van. They pull up to this house, we see this other car pull up behind the van, and then there's kind of like a little standoff. They're trying to figure out who's in the car, that sort of thing. And then the next thing we know is that Hess is able to track down, I think, where exactly they are with the kid. When they all get there, the two kidnappers are dead. The boy, I think he's been found. I can't really recall how he was found or how he was returned to his parents. But when they get to that crime scene, they just assume that the killer killed themselves and that everything is over. And what we actually learn happened is that, as I said, another car drove up, someone killed the kidnappers, and then that person who killed the kidnappers is the real killer, and he's just framing other people. Going into my third point, the killer is targeting bad moms. So we know that Thulin and Hess are able to work together. Once they understand who is being targeted, they are looking through their CPS's reports of children who are in situations where their parents are not properly taking care of them, and so they're isolating these cases about women in particular, and so they are able to narrow it down to like one or two people, and there's something that helps them to decide who to protect first or whatever. And so they pick this woman, and I can't recall her name, but we see her dropping her kid off at some type of class. We see the other parents gossiping about what this mom is wearing. We see her hooking up with somebody else's husband, like in a back alley. We see that woman getting locked out. We see her kind of like walking through the basement of this building. So she's really like underground. She can't open any doors. We hear footsteps, and so it's really creepy. It's really scary. We think that someone's chasing her. She's starting to panic, and she's finally able to get out back to the main level and get outside. And so we're assuming that she's escaped being killed by the killer who is hunting Bad Mom. We do see the scene where the police, they set up this kind of like thing to where they're going to lure the killer to that woman's house, that new mom that they have identified as the next target. And so we see like this hooded figure walking up to this apartment complex. He's walking up the stairs. He's completely covered. We don't know who it is. We see that person going to this mom's front door. He walks past it, and then he actually comes back, and so then they tackle him. They realize that it was the guy that she was sleeping with. I guess the killer had recorded them hooking up and sent him the video as if it was the woman sending it, and so he was just going there to confront her and say like, hey, you're not going to blackmail me, leave my family out of this, don't expose me, that sort of thing. And so it's not the killer who they are tackling and apprehending. They realize that this is a decoy. And so what happened is, while all of this is happening, we actually see the mom and her kid at this safe house. There's, I think, 2 guys there who are watching them. One guy might be outside, another guy is like playing video games, and he needs to go outside to do something. The mom is like maybe asking for something, I don't know. And then so we see that she's in the house by herself, and I think the car alarm starts going off, and so she ends up going outside. This is where the real killer is able to take her, capture her, torture her, and then string her up like he was doing with all of the other moms. And so what we learned from this is that, one, the killer was really great at setting them up. He was able to get the victim that they knew he was after, despite them doing everything that they could to prevent her from being killed. And so we have Thulin and Hesh coming to this new crime scene super late. They find the woman in the wood. They know that there's nothing that they can do for her, and so obviously this is just really putting them on edge, because they thought that they were kind of like in the clear, but then now they are dealing with the fact that he is still killing people. And they even at some point go to the person who is in jail for Christine's murder to try to get him to give them information, because they know that he knows that he's not the one who did it. And so obviously he at some point has interacted with the killer, and they just really want his help, and he's like refusing to help them. He's taunting them about the fact that they're clueless and they don't know what they're doing and that they've got everything wrong. Going into my 4th point, Thulin realizes that chestnuts have different species. So we see throughout the season, we know that Thulin has been dating this guy. We know that she has a kid, and we know that there's like this cop or something like that who's close with her family, whatever, and he takes care of her child. His name is Sebastian, and her child's name is Lee. And so we see that she is at like this presentation or whatever for Lee's class at school, and Sebastian is really trying to tell her like, hey, you need to focus on your daughter more, you need to leave work at work, that sort of thing. And so later on we see this conversation about Lee wanting to live with Sebastian, because obviously he's more of her primary caregiver, being that Thulin is so busy with her career. Like, it's really demanding being a cop and having to basically work 24/7 to solve these crimes. It's not like you can just be like, okay, I'll wait until 9 a.m. to check in and then I'll continue investigating. You're always investigating. And so anyway, Thulin is at this presentation that her daughter's class is doing, and they're talking about chestnuts or Chestnut Man, and there's something that one of the girls says that she ends up asking a question about, and she's like, species, like, clarify that or whatever. And so she realizes that chestnuts have different species, and so this leads her to have a talk with her daughter and Sebastian to let them know that she's leaving early, she needs to go to work and investigate. And so she goes to this guy named Jens, who we've been introduced to him earlier in the season. He is basically the forensics expert. He is the one who processes the crime scene, analyzes the evidence, that sort of thing. And so he's been very active in the investigation up to this point. Jens is actually the person that she goes to when she wants to look into things a little bit deeper. And so she goes to him and says, hey, you know, chestnuts have different species. Can you examine the chestnuts that we found at the different crime scene and tell me if they're all the same? And so she's able to learn that the chestnuts that they have found have come from a specific place, like they're grown in a certain area. And I think they consulted with somebody else outside of the department to confirm that. And so what ends up happening is that Thulin is kind of investigating that on her own. Hess is also kind of interested in this other murder that happened like way before, back in the 80s. And so there was this family on this farm, and everyone was murdered. There were 2 kids who were adopted into that family, but nobody knows what happened to like the boy. So a girl and a boy who were adopted into this family, and then basically everyone was killed. The daughter was saved or whatever, found alive, and then people didn't really realize that the boy was missing. I'm not 100% sure. And so Hess is like really interested in that murder. He realizes that there were Chestnut Men at that scene, and then he's just really able to connect that crime to what is happening now. And so he realizes that they're connected. It's probably the same person who killed all of those people back then who's killing these moms now. And so what we have happening is that there's 2 things happening simultaneously. In investigating that old crime, he's able to connect with like the police officers who investigated that crime or knew a little bit about it. He's able to go through the files, and he realizes that there's like other people that he can talk to kind of like identify the kids who were adopted into that family or whatever. And so he goes to this officer's house. The mother has kept all of their daughter's school stuff, and they actually have class photos or whatever hanging up on their wall. And so Hess is able to go to that photo, and he recognizes Jen's in that photo. And then on the other hand, what we have happening is that Thulin and Jen's are driving together to investigate these different areas where a particular species of chestnut men have or chestnuts have been grown. And so as they're in the car going to these places, we have Jen's really like coming at Thulin for like her mothering and her parenting, and he's really trying to push her into like abandoning what she's doing and go and be with her daughter. And so she's really confused by where he's coming from. She doesn't understand it, and he's obviously doing this because he's the killer and he's targeting bad moms. And so he's really trying to keep her from becoming a bad mom and telling her to prioritize her daughter. And then at the same time this is happening, Jen is supposed to, I think, be meeting somebody else, but then also escaping. And then Thulin is supposed to be meeting her daughter, doing something for her daughter. And so they end up stopping randomly, and she gets out, looks at this tree, realizes that the chestnuts are the same. And then there's like a kind of like gravel path leading back somewhere, obviously to farmland, whatever. And so he is starting to get really worried at this point, because this is the place where he is operating out of. And so him and Thulin go up to the building. She's trying to break in. He has a key. He pretends to find it under something, but he actually had the key because he was operating out of this building. And so she goes in. She looks around. She sees like this whole police setup of monitors and all of this high-tech software equipment. And she knows that the person basically has a drop on them. He had everything. He knows everything that they know because of all of this equipment that he had. And so she is not really realizing that it's him at this point, but then he, knowing that he's very close to being exposed, he turns on her, outs himself, and she gets tied up, and she is held hostage. And so what is supposed to be happening is that Jens is trying to meet with Rosa about something, and he makes her come to that house. She, after information on her daughter, on Christine, and confirming if she's still alive or not. And so we have Thulin, Rosa, and Jens at this house, forced to interact and have a conversation. Obviously, Rosa is is at a disadvantage. Thulin is at a disadvantage because she's tied up, she's been beaten, that sort of thing. And then I do want to backtrack a little bit to explain how Rosa is connected to Jen. And so, as I mentioned, Rosa's family took in foster kids, and so they took in the sister-in-law's brother, but she was really creeped out by the brother, and she told her family about this. And so what happened was that sister and brother were taken out of the home, and they were placed into another home. And the home that they were placed into was this really abusive home. What we learned is that Jen and his sister were placed with these people who abused them, and so they retaliated against his family and killed them all. That was the crime that Hess was investigating from like the 80s or the 90s, whatever. And then Jen blames Rosa for them being put in that situation because she correctly and appropriately told her mom that he was creeping her out, whatever, because he was in fact really weird. And so he blamed her for what happened to them. And so Hess ends up coming in, and he's able to figure out, one, that Thulin's missing. He's able to figure out where they are actually located. He comes to them by himself, and he's able to come in. Thulin has been thrown in the bathtub. Her feet are taped, her hands are taped, her mouth is taped, and she, I think, hears Hess somehow, and so she's banging on like the tub, trying to get his attention. He's able to go to her, but what happens is Jen has Rosa in the basement, and he's basically about to cut off her hand or her arm. I'm not 100% sure. He's aware that Hess is there, and so Hess is able to untie Thulin, and then somehow Jen lures him basically down to the basement where Rosa is. I don't know if Rosa is knocked out at this point, but she's not able to like alert him or anything, and it's a complete trap. Jen has like the saw on the floor making the noise to make it seem like he doesn't know what's going on, but it's a trap, and he gets to drop on him. He's able to lock them in the basement. He sets it on fire, and so Hess and Rosa are trapped in the basement. They have no way to get out because I think he locked it or something like that. The windows also have like bars across them, and so he has to figure out how to get out, and he's able to use his saw to cut the bars, and they escape out the window. And so while all that is happening, Jen is thinking that he has the upper hand, and so he is confronted by Thulin, but he's able to overpower her, and then I think somehow he gets her in the car. He's driving her somewhere, something like that, to kill her, and we have Hess being able to escape and get out. He goes after them, and then we see Hess being able to kind of get in front of them, and he's basically in front of the car pointing a gun at them, and then Thulin is able to kind of like distract him, and they ram the car into like a tree or something like that, and then Jen is thrown from the car, and he landed on a branch, and so he's killed instantly. And so that leads me into he's killed instantly, and then Thulin and Hess are kind of like freed from everything that's happening, and then Rhoda, I think she's going to be okay, and so that's where I'm going to leave it at for point 4. Going into point 5 is the Jen and Rosa connection. I've already talked about this, and so the reason why Jen did all of this is because he felt like Rosa lied on him and got him and his sister moved to this other home, and he and his twin sister were abused. And so what we learned from this is that basically at this point the case is considered wrapped up. So Hess is supposed to go back to wherever he's from. Thulin was trying to move into cybersecurity, cybercrime, so that she could spend more time with her daughter Lee, and I don't know if that's still an option or not, but Lee also still wants to stay with Sebastian, and I don't quite remember how that family situation turned out, but there's something that happened that made them really consider whether or not Christine was still alive. They're able to figure out that Jens has been like sending money or something like that to this other place in this different city. They go to that house, and there's a woman there, and it's actually his twin sister. They're able to disarm her, and then they search the place, and because they're very familiar with like underground bunkers or whatever, at this point they realize that Christine is still alive and she's in this bunker. Obviously she's been taken care of throughout this time, and so we see that she's able to be reunited with her family. She's in good health somewhat, and then we have Jen's sister realizing that her brother is dead. She's been arrested obviously for her part in kidnapping Christine and whatever, and so this is where we have the season ending. The family is reunited. So to go ahead and wrap up this episode, overall this was a really great show. It was definitely super scary at different points throughout the season. I am really glad that I watched it because it really held my attention throughout each episode. I think I was able to finish it within a couple of days because I really just wanted to keep watching and see what happened. But then also too, I had to be mindful of what I was watching because it did give me nightmares. And so overall, really great show. I would really love to see Hesh and Thulin paired up again to solve other crime. I have no idea if they plan to make a season 2, but this definitely was a great watch. And so with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.